One of the weirdest and most fascinating things that I have learned from working with people who struggle with cleaning and decluttering like myself is that we oftentimes can have absolutely no problem cleaning or decluttering someone else's home. In fact, we can even enjoy it and do a pretty good job. This is something that I hear from clients over and over again, and it not only proves that we're not lazy, but it's something, if you can believe it, even professional cleaners can struggle with. It may seem strange to other people, but this is a very real phenomenon. And I was chatting with someone in the comments a few days ago who cleans homes for a living, and she testified that this is absolutely true for her, which really got me thinking, number one, why is this the case? And number two, how can we actually leverage this paradox to create strategies that can help us to be able to clean and organize our own home? So that is exactly what we're going to be talking about today, because after analyzing these questions, I have found that the insights that came out of it are really useful and helped me to develop some new methods and strategies that have definitely been helpful for me. So I truly hope that they end up being helpful for you as well. But let's first start with the why behind all of this, because I honestly feel like this curious little observation actually makes a lot of sense. So firstly, there's just a lot less overwhelm involved when we're cleaning up for someone else. When we're trying to clean up our own space, the task can feel a lot more stressful because we're usually not just dealing with the physical mess and clutter. We're also dealing with all the mental clutter that comes along with it. Our own homes are filled with emotional baggage and memories and items that we have personal attachment to, all of which can make it really, really difficult for us to make decisions. But when we walk into someone else's home, we don't have these same setbacks. We can see the mess and the clutter for what it really is, just dirty or disorganized or unnecessary objects that we can simply address one by one. There's really no personal attachment, so we can be objective and we can simply focus on the task. We're also not facing our own judgment and a ton of negative emotions about the mess and clutter. There's no sense of guilt about letting things get this bad or feelings of failure about not being able to stay on top of things, which really can kill our motivation because we can embarrassed embarrassed or frustrated or even ashamed about the state of our home, especially if we feel like we have tried and failed on a regular basis to be able to stay organized. Now, another thing that we're probably not fighting against in someone else's home is perfectionism. In our own homes, for whatever reason, we tend to overthink everything, and we can feel like every little thing has to be some specific way, even if that is in no way realistic, which can, of course, make us feel like procrastinating because we're completely stressed out and overwhelmed, and usually we can't even get started because we make it into this big deal. But when we are working on someone else's home, we are purely focused on efficiency and the deadline we have. We are simply thinking about getting the job done, not about trying to make everything perfect, usually because there's some kind of time limit. We know that we only have a certain number of hours that we can be there, and we usually just want to get as much done as possible. And another huge thing is just having external motivation. When we have a clear and pressing drive, like helping a friend or fulfilling an obligation, it can definitely help to break through the inertia that we would typically experience at home. That pressure and that urgency can be a huge push for us to get moving. I also think that when we clean for someone else, it can feel more meaningful to us. We're happy to do the job because it's an act of love. We know that we're helping them be able to improve their space and maybe even their lives. It's a way of us being able to show support. And let's face it, so many of us fail to give our own selves that same level of love and support. And because of that, it makes it a lot more difficult for us to be able to carry through with things that would ultimately make our lives better in the same way. And lastly, it's just more fun to clean someone else's home. There's novelty attached to it. But when we try to clean our own home, it just seems like the same boring, overwhelming, repetitive tasks that we've done countless times before, or we feel like we failed at countless times before. But the second we walk into someone else's home, it feels like this giant puzzle that seems really satisfying and rewarding to try to solve. It's just a lot less draining. And on top of all of this, we can also have personal or practical issues that can also make our own homes more difficult to clean. For example, and I know I'm not alone in this, I have ADHD, which comes along with a huge laundry list of issues that can directly interfere with cleaning and decluttering our own home. And I have a whole playlist of support that I will link down in the description box if that is your case as well. But that's just one of the millions of other things that could be adding to our challenge in cleaning and decluttering our own space versus someone else's. But I really do think if we take a step back, this phenomenon actually makes a lot of sense. And it also gives us a lot of insight into what could be holding us back and what's really going on. And more importantly, what we should be focusing on if we want to try to gain that same type of motivation, but for our own home. I mean, I guess we could just agree to clean each other's homes, but since that's probably not that practical, we can just start to apply a lot of these same principles. And the one I think we have to start with is making it more meaningful for ourselves. We need to recognize that cleaning is not just a chore. It is a genuine act of self-love and self-care. Now, we know it's an act of love and support when we're doing it for someone else. So why not shift our perspective to start seeing cleaning our own home as a true way for us to take care of ourselves and to show love for ourselves? A clean home is not a luxury. It really is a basic need for well-being. And if a friend were struggling in this area, we'd definitely help them. So we need to start thinking of cleaning as a way of doing the same thing for our future self. And if we hesitate, let's start asking ourselves if we do these things for someone that we love. And if the answer is yes, let that be our motivation to start taking care of ourselves in the same way. This has been one of the mindset shifts that completely changed the game for me. But let's also talk about some of the more practical strategies that can also help. The first is finding some kind of external motivation. And what I mean by that is to create drive through expectations, rewards, or deadlines. If it works so well when we're cleaning someone else's house, why not try to create some kind of version of that for ourselves? Something a lot of people find helpful is setting up an accountability system, like asking a friend to stop in to make sure that you are working on what you said you were going to work on, or just sending them a picture every hour so that they can see your progress. Or something that always works for me is to schedule some kind of event at my home, so I have to do it. But give yourself a deadline and give yourself some kind of accountability. And like I just mentioned, something else that can be really effective is to promise ourselves some kind of reward. When we're helping someone else, we have the ultimate reward of being able to see them so happy and relieved that this big job is done. But a lot of times it's much more difficult for us to kind of envision our own future happiness or relief when we are done with cleaning. So sometimes it really can be helpful to promise ourselves some kind of little treat to make it seem worthwhile. And of course, that does not mean it has to be something expensive or even something material in any way, just something that makes it seem worth it. And if this is a strategy that you like to use, please let me know in the comments what your favorite rewards are, because I would love to get some new ideas. Now, another thing we need to do is to try to focus on the task and not the emotion. When we're cleaning our own space, it is so easy for us to get caught up in the emotional weight of everything and just the emotional weight of certain items. So to help us become a little bit more objective, we can try to just channel all of our energy into whatever task we are working on, whether that be wiping something down or organizing or clearing away clutter. In fact, I like to set an actual timer for like 15 or 20 minutes and try to beat the clock. And I have definitely found that this really keeps me from getting stuck, and it helps me to continue to move forward because I know I have to move quickly. And it really does prevent me from getting lost in those emotional spirals and these mental loops that we're all familiar with. I've also found that listening to music or a podcast can be another thing that can distract me enough from letting me spiral into these negative emotions, because I'm thinking about what I'm listening to instead of ruminating over how messy my house is. Now, another goal that we really need to focus on here is ditching the perfectionism. We do not need to get everything perfect in our home. In fact, it's not even possible. So I have no idea why we always put this type of pressure on ourselves. Taking a more pragmatic approach to cleaning, like we do when we're helping someone else, can be incredibly freeing. Truly, the only thing that matters here is progress. We just have to keep moving at whatever pace we can, because otherwise we're going to get stuck in the paralysis that comes from thinking that everything needs to be done exactly right, which of course is not the case. Any amount of progress at all is going to be better than whatever we started with. Just treat it like a job, not a personal reflection. Remind yourself that cleaning and decluttering are just tasks that need to be completed. They are in no way a reflection of your worth or your character. We need to make it less about us and a lot more about the space. So just go in there with a clear list of what you want to accomplish, do the best you can, and try to have fun in the process. We need to start treating it in the same way that we would if we were helping a friend, simply as a job that needs to be completed that is going to end up making someone's life better. And in this case, it's our own. And if we can even make one small step towards that goal, that is truly amazing. Again, we've already proven to ourselves that this issue really has nothing to do with being lazy, but sometimes we do need to almost kind of trick our brain into doing whatever it is we want it to do, and I have definitely found that these strategies can help with that, so I truly hope that they end up being just as beneficial for you. Let me know in the comments if they work out for you. I'm going to also link down a huge playlist of support in the description box just in case you need it. I want to thank you so much for being with me today, and I will see you in the next video.